Hello, hello, hello. It is Saturday afternoon. It's, well, Saturday early evening. It is 6:20, and I am taking the dogs outside. Where are the dogs? Dogs, where'd you go? Oh, they're over here, running around. And Alex is upstairs taking a shower, and I'm getting ready to go take a shower, and then we are going to our friend's birthday party. And I'm real excited about it. We're gonna go pick up Sarah first, and it is a beautiful day in Indianapolis. It's not super warm, but it's nice. It's like 44, late, like upper 40s, 50s. Isn't it pretty? I'm ready for all these trees to bloom and stuff and be ready, so. What are you doing, Boo Radley? Are you sniffing around, Boo Boo? What are you guys doing, huh? Are you sniffing around? Boo Radley started doing something that we probably don't want to film, so we're gonna go back inside now. Boo Radley! He started pooping. So anyway, I will be back later. Bye. Hello, hello, hello. It's later in the evening and I'm back. The moon is pretty tonight. It's like underneath the clouds. It is late. It is 4:21 a.m. I fell asleep. Oh. So, I'll tell you about my day. I went to, I got up today, and I went and got a coffee. My day was so exciting. That means it wasn't. And I had a hat on, you guys, till just a couple minutes ago, and then I took it off because it was bothering me. So, I went and got a coffee, and then, I mean, my day was typically what it is every day. I went and got a coffee, and then Alex had some stuff he had to do this morning, work stuff, and then he met his mom for lunch, and then he came home, and he was so tired that he took a nap and fell asleep, and I filmed a video. I was going to film videos on all my channels, but I ended up just filming videos on one of my channels, and then I forgot that I had posted my Peterisms video from yesterday, so I posted it today with my vlog, and yeah, and then by that time, it was time for us to start getting ready to go to our friend's birthday party, because we had to pick up Sarah because she was going with us, and then she and Alex were going to go out afterwards for St. Patrick's Day to this like bar restaurant just up the street from us, because we had a bunch of friends that were going there, and I wanted to come home and do a live stream. I'm not real into the whole St. Patrick's Day thing. It's just not real fun for me, so they had fun. They didn't stay out super late. So anyway, we went to our friend's birthday party. It was really fun. She has a daughter that she just had. Her daughter's going to be 1 in April. And she and her husband moved into their new house. I can't remember. It was like, I don't know, 6 months ago or something. And so it was at their house. And it was just all her family and like one friend besides us. She's a huge family. And it was fun. It was just real family oriented, and they had like cheese and hummus and these little cakes, and it was fun. We just sat around and talked. We got there at like 7:30, and then we stayed there till like 9:30, I think. And then I took Alex and Sarah to this place up the street from us, and then I came home. We must have stayed there later than that, because I got home and I did a live stream at like 11. So we must have stayed there later than that. I don't know, maybe 10. We stayed at her house. It doesn't matter. But anyway, and then I did a live stream. That was really fun. We read some Misconnections ads, which was funny. I'm trying to do the Misconnections ads in the magazines and live streams, because I used to do them on videos, and I know some people like them, so I'm trying to do those in the live streams instead. And then I did the magazine last weekend, so I didn't want to do it again this weekend, because it would have been the same like magazines, because there weren't like new ones, especially for like the National Examiner. When I read the Sheila Wood Friendship Club, it's the same thing. And then I took the dogs out, and I went upstairs, and I like laid down for a little bit, I was like, I'm just going to wait until Alex gets home, and I completely fell asleep. And then he came home, and I slept for a little bit longer, and then I kept on like waking up and then like going back to sleep and looking at my phone and like waking up and going back to sleep. Then finally I got up and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go vlog now. And then tomorrow, we don't have anything to do tomorrow. I think we'll do like brunch, and then I'll probably make some videos in the afternoon. I may take tomorrow off from making videos because I've made videos consistently like all week long. So I may take tomorrow off. We'll just have to see. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. Like with the Peter Monn channel, it kind of depends on if there's something that I want to make a video about. And the Peterisms videos, like I always like to just do meditations on there. There's one I've been like putting together, but I'm trying to find like all the pieces for it, and it'll make sense when I do the video, so I don't want to talk about it on here. But I keep, like, it's something that I collect, and I keep all of them like in a new place now, but like I used to keep them someplace else, and I can't find that thing where I used to keep them. So I'm like, where did I put that? And then the booktube video, I do need to make a booktube video tomorrow because I need to announce the next book that we're reading for the book club. I was supposed to do that today and I didn't do that. And the review channel, I've got something I want to review on there, so I'll probably do a couple videos tomorrow in the afternoon. We usually go to brunch, and then my neck is like itching. I don't know why. I usually do. We usually go to brunch, and then we come home, and Alex goes back to sleep for like 2 hours because he's tired, and then he gets up and just watches TV and kind of like catches up on resting the rest of the day. So that's that. And then Monday I have training, my training appointment. My friend Valerie's home, but she got sick, and she said, would you want to meet up tomorrow night? So we might meet up tomorrow night and go to the casino. But we haven't decided yet. So she was resting tonight. She still didn't feel real great. So if she's sick tomorrow night, we won't go, but yeah. I was doing a little shopping tonight online. I bought these like high top sneaker kind of boots. They're like Puma, and they were on sale. They were like a half off, and then they were marked down again. And they're not really like summer shoes at all, but to go out or something, that would be fun. And then also for like the fall, I want them for the fall. They're really cool, and they're not something that would be like out of style by next year. And then I've been really, really wanting like a gold St. Christopher medal. Or like a like I really wanted a St. Christopher medal because my mom had given me a St. Christopher medal and a cross, but they're silver, and I wanted a gold one. And then I also wanted like a Spanish coin, like a really small one, but I was having a hard time finding it. So I ended up buying this St. Christopher medal tonight online that I like. I didn't want to pay like $100 or more for it, and I found like a good priced one. So I ordered that. Those were the two things I got tonight. Yep. I've been listening to a lot of my audiobook too, because we're doing the live stream. A week from tomorrow is the live stream for The Daughter of a Serial Killer, about Carrie Rollins and the BTK killer. The book is so different than I thought it would be. Like, it really has absolutely nothing to do with him being a serial killer, like nothing whatsoever. It's really about like her faith and her spirituality and how it got her through, which remove the fact that I want to read about like true crime for this year. The book is actually really good, because if you're interested in spirituality whatsoever, and you know, like so my spirituality is a combination of a lot of different belief systems that I like, and or that I feel pertain to me, all kind of centering around the idea of compassion, love, kindness, My camera was out of focus. I don't know why it's doing this. Okay. But my spiritual belief is grounded in, several different ideas of, love, compassion, kindness, forgiveness, understanding, and tolerance. But I've pulled from like a lot of different areas of things that I've read about that make sense to me. And I continue to do that. So it's interesting to hear her talk about like how she has used her spiritual beliefs to get through some really hard times in her life. The thing is that a lot of people have issues with the fact that it is really, it's very religious, which it is. There's a lot of quoting of scripture, which I don't have a problem with, like none whatsoever. And, but I don't know if maybe that's, part of being in a 12-step program, that, you hear a lot of people's different spiritual beliefs and religious beliefs, and, there are a lot of people that share stuff, and you just kind of like, filter it out. I remember years and years and years ago, I read Purpose Driven Life. Well, most of it. I didn't finish it, but I read most of it. And Purpose Driven Life is like 40 days of meditations and scripture and lessons, and 40 nights or something like that. And, based around the whole idea of 40 days and 40 nights in the Bible. And it's actually a really good book. I had to kind of like read through the scripture a little bit and like apply the lesson to my life by not being bogged down by just the scripture. I don't want to miss the lesson in life because I don't like the verbiage, and I think when I was younger, I was so resistant to hearing things that people had to say to me. I'm not talking about religious beliefs that are condemning of others. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, religious beliefs that are pretty open-minded. But, like specifically about being gay, I think, I think the other thing is important is that 12-step programs are not about any specific religion. We're not religious, and we're non-denominational. Even though the writing of the basic text comes across very religious at times, it's this idea of finding out your own higher power. But the thing is that when I was younger, I felt, and it's a different time today, 2019, things have really changed, but back then, when I was growing up, it's like, I really mistook the fact that a lot of religions, and a lot of religions still do, condemn homosexuality and, people that are gay, and that is just, you're wrong if you're gay. And so, for me, I think my way of responding to that was just by saying, I'm not going to listen to any of it. Instead of realizing that maybe there was something valuable in what was being said to me, not by those condemning religions, but by others. My mother was raised Episcopalian, and I was raised Lutheran and not Missouri Synod, which is like one of the sects of it. Sects, S-E-C-T-S. But I was raised the other one, which I can't remember what it's called now. But it's really like a watered down form of, being Protestant, and very open-minded. Our sermons on Sundays when I was growing up were like current events turned into like learning lessons in life. I mean, I went to a very open-minded church, and never had any bad religious situations that happened to me growing up, you know? But I think when you're gay, and I think you finally, like, part of the coming out process is being more confident in your own skin and being more comfortable of that, you're kind of resistant, or at least I was, to anybody that comes at you with any form of, you know, sanctity or religiosity or anything like that. And I think, so what happened was, I don't know, like, you know, I came out when I was 18, and then I got sober when I was 22 and a half, and I think it was really important that I came out and got sober so close to each other, and I really had no idea what I was going to talk about in this vlog tonight. This is interesting that it's going in this direction. But, you know, I got sober at 22 and a half, and I came out when I was 18, so what is that? 18 and 19, 19 and 20, you know, 4 years in between, and, so, you know, like me doing my first inventory and being in a 12-step program and things like that, really, I had to take a look at my being gay a lot and all of that, especially with my spiritual beliefs. And what's interesting is my spiritual journey didn't really start until I was 2 years sober. But this is what I was going to say, was before that, I was always kind of like, anybody that would talk to me about, like, God, or, you know, say that, you know, like, the Lord this or whatever, I just, like, immediately, like, turned what they were saying off in my head. Like, I just, you know, defined them as Bible thumpers, and they had nothing I wanted to hear. And that's sad, because, you know, like, the reality is, there were a lot of really caring people that came along the way that spoke a language that I wasn't willing to listen to. And what I've realized today is that, and I'm not talking about, like, the Westboro Baptist Church, those kind of crazies. I'm talking about people that are just, you know, they find comfort in their spiritual beliefs and religious doctrine, and they're not trying to change who I am, you know, that it's all from a place of love and compassion, which, when my spiritual beliefs are from a place of love and compassion, and somebody else's place is, you know, from a place of love and compassion, then we really are speaking the same language, so to speak. You know, it's interesting because, like, I remember when we started hanging out with Melissa and Jason, and Melissa and Jason are pretty involved in their church, and they go on a regular basis, and I know their church here in Indianapolis, and it's a really, like, open-minded church. And I can remember we were out at dinner one night, and we were talking about it, and Melissa said something to me about, like, she wasn't trying to get me to go. She just was like, well, why don't you go to church? And I said, in all honesty, I said, because first of all, I like to sleep in, and second of all, like, you know, my 12-step meetings are kind of like a spiritual outlet for me and whatever, the sleeping in part, you know. And she's like, well, there's a lot of services, not just in the morning. And I go, oh, I know that. I said, I just am of the belief, you know, that, you know, a car doesn't have to be in a garage to be a car. And I don't need to be in a church to be spiritual. And so I've never received anything personally from a church in the same way that I have by, you know, driving around and listening to music. And, like, I don't talk much about this on here, but I think Tanya might have even mentioned it on here in a vlog one night, but, like, I listen to a lot of gospel music. Like, I love gospel music. And, you know, there's something to me about, and lately, just listening to, like I have it on right now, listening to a classical music, it's very spiritual for me, you know, to just drive in silence, or with classical music, or gospel music, or even Bob Dylan, you know, and Judy Collins, and just, you know, and be in my head. It's a spiritual release for me. And but what Melissa said to me was, Jason said, well, I think you would really like our church, you know. And Melissa goes, yeah, like, if you're ever interested in going, just let me know, and you can come with us sometime. No, like, you should go to church, or you should be in church, or yada, 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 whatever, you know? Just, hey, if you ever want to go sometime, let me know. And I thought and I remember looking at them and saying, that's the way that you approach people. You don't force it down their throat, you leave it open. And I have left it open. There's been many times that I've thought about, you know, reaching out to them and saying, hey, I think I might want to go and just experience it, you know, and see what it's like. And it may be something that I want to add to my life. I don't know. You know, my husband is atheist leaning now, I think more towards being agnostic. And what's interesting is that, like, my spiritual beliefs and his lack thereof have never been a problem in our relationship. And my ex was an atheist too. Towards the end of the relationship, he was more agnostic. But, you know, I mean, you can only be around somebody long enough and hear about God moments and, you know, all this kind of stuff without it, I think, having some kind of effect on you long term. Or, you know, like, I mean, Alex knows that I vehemently believe in prayer and meditation, and my higher power is, like, you know, for me, such a prominent part of what I believe. And I don't talk about it a lot because I feel like it's very private, you know? But I can remember when I got sober, you know, like, my counselor at the time, who, I went to a gay counselor, and he, like, really pushed, like, me talking about being gay. It was like, me being gay has nothing to do with me being an alcoholic. I don't think that it really has anything to do with that, or having to being an addict. It doesn't have anything to do with that. And he was like, you know, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, like, I don't think it has anything to do with that. And then, you know, my sponsor at the time, was like, do you think your being gay has anything to do with you being out? I felt like people were always pushing it. And I was like, no, I don't think it has anything to do with that whatsoever. Like, I think that's outside of that. Well, when I started really taking a look at my lack of a spiritual journey in my life, you know, it's interesting because we're reading the Columbine book next month, by David Collins. And I don't remember when I read this book, but there's a book called She Said Yes. And it's about this girl that was a student at Columbine. I think it's a true story. I don't know how they know what she said, but she was, like, underneath a desk in the library or something, and they said, do you believe in God? And she said yes, and they shot her and killed her. And the book was a lot about, like, her belief and how she had gotten there. And it reminded me of, like, when I was in high school, you know, and I went to school with all these people that, like, would talk about, like, you know, their belief in Jesus Christ, and they were all involved in this really big church that's near where I grew up and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, I just, like, really struggled with, like, I thought they were phonies. I didn't really think they really believed in what they were saying. I thought they were just saying it because it sounded good or something like that, you know? Because I had never internalized any spirituality. I had never internalized any spiritual belief. Okay, so here, I'll tell you a little bit about my spiritual journey, and some of you will be like, okay, this is way out there. But, you know, a lot of times people ask me, they're like, how do you find something that means something to you? I will say this, like, in coming into a 12-step program, if I was told that I had to believe in a, not that I don't to some degree today, but if I was told at that time that I had to believe in a Christian God straight out of the Bible, I don't think I'd be sober today. I think I would have been so resistant to that, you know, and the idea that you can come up with what you believe in and, you know, believe in whatever you want to believe in, I think, you know, I think it's fantastic. I think because then so many people that come into the rooms of 12-step programs do not have good histories with religion. I didn't have any bad history. I don't have anything bad to say about my religious experience growing up, except for that I was bored a lot. But I mean, I grew up going to Sunday school and confirmation and all that kind of stuff, you know? It's interesting, like, listening to this book by this girl, this Carrie Rollins, like, her, she went to a Lutheran church. Her experience is very similar to mine growing up. But, so anyway, so I, you know, like, Step 2 is came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And step 3 is made a decision to turn my life and my will over to the care of God as I understand Him. Okay, so what that says is that you come up with a belief for a higher power, and then step 3 is turning your life and your will. Okay, so not just your addiction, but your life and your will over to the care of God. And we're talking really about sanity versus insanity in that moment, like the idea of insanity of, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, which is really addiction. And so what's interesting about that is that at the time, I got really, really caught up. I mean, we're talking about steps 2 and 3. Okay, these are early steps. I got really caught up in the fact that I had to have a belief in a higher power. Like, I had to, or I couldn't move on with my steps. And my sponsor was just like, I remember, like, we kind of got into it, and he was like, and there's a part in the basic text that says that God either is or He isn't, It doesn't have to be He, it can be whatever, but it references that. And I remember he was like, God either is or He isn't. Like, do you believe in something? Do you believe in not? Do you not believe in something? And I remember I was like, I want to believe in something. And he was like, okay. He was like, but can you turn that over? And I was like, because like when I first got sober, like I didn't even, you guys, I talk about prayer in my purisms videos like all the time. Let me tell you how prayer started for me, okay? Prayer started for me with literally getting on my knees at night and saying thank you, and getting on my knees in the morning and saying help. That is all I was capable of doing. I didn't believe a whole lot more than that. I couldn't do it. Like I was so resistant to the process, And so I got to the point where I was like, okay, I'd always kind of believed there was something out there. I was always more agnostic than I don't know that I was ever atheist, but I was maybe, I don't know, but I was always more agnostic, questioning. And so my lips keep on getting dry tonight. So my sponsor was like, so you can believe in something. I need to just pull my chapstick out and put it over here. And I was like, yeah. So we did a 3rd step prayer. I've talked about that on here before. And my 3rd step prayer was, well, the first one I did. So a 3rd step prayer is where you basically surrender. Okay. And my first 3rd step prayer, what I see it as when I tell my story, the night that I came home from treatment and I was in the shower and I was just like crying, and I was like, and back in the day, I used to love to drink in the shower. I would stand in the shower underneath the water and I would just drink out of a bottle straight, and I loved it. And so there I was, 30 some days later in the shower. I had just gotten home and I'd been with my friend the whole day that had picked me up and got my hair cut and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, you can run or you can stay. And I was scared. I was really scared. I had no idea what that life was going to look like, And I got in the shower and I remember, like, this was long before I ever even talked to my sponsor about all of the God stuff. But I mean, it was kind of like what they call it, like an 11th hour prayer, I was kind of like bawling in the shower, and I was like, God, I can't do this on my own. Like, if you're out there, help. Because I just can't do this. I don't know what to do. And I'm scared that I'm going to die. And I'm scared that I'm going to go back out and start using again. I just was like, I can't do this. I mean, I was like literally bawling in the shower, And I don't know, something just came over me that night. I felt relieved. I felt protected. I felt safe. Weirdly, I remember getting out of the showers and putting on my little pajamas, that like my dad had like bought me clean pajamas and stuff. And that was such a weird time, that, to be back in the apartment too. And my apartment was so gross, and my dad had it professionally cleaned, and He'd have my coat professionally cleaned, because it just, you know, I don't know, my dad was just awesome through that whole thing. And he had my grocery, like, he had my refrigerator filled with like juices and fresh turkey and ham and cheese and lunch meat and all this stuff that I could just make sandwiches, and, you know, and I just threw myself into recovery, and I don't even know that I knew what I was doing. I was just told, I just did what I was told. I just did what I was told, and I put one foot in front of the other, you know, and I can just remember getting up and like eating cereal in my kitchen counter, you know, and then like, and this was the same kitchen counter that I had, you know, waited for drug dealers and called drug dealers on, and, you know, like smoked a joint, eating a Vicodin, and then there I was eating cereal, you know, granola that my dad would buy me, and we would go to the grocery store, or he would just bring groceries over, and I had a pot of coffee going 24 hours a day, you know, and then I would go to meetings. And, well, I read the book The Celestine Prophecy like 4 days in from being home from treatment. I talked about that book the other night on here, or did I talk about it in my Peterisms video? I don't know. But I read that book and it changed my whole life. It like changed my whole perspective. I don't know what it was about that book. I've tried to read it since and it didn't have the same impact on me. But I read it, and I was enrolled to go to school at that time. And I was like, yeah, I can't go to school right now. I need to focus on my sobriety. And so I talked to my dad, and he was supportive of that. And that's what I did. I focused on my sobriety. One of the really cool things that has happened as a result of me getting sober, you know, my dad is a big believer in 30-day treatment programs for treatment facilities as a minimum. And he has gone and talked to a lot of doctors, educating doctors on setting boundaries and limits with patients with addiction issues. And I mean, my dad has gotten really, really educated on addiction. And it's been kind of like a really cool thing that's happened as a result of all of that, you know, and neither one of us really knew what we were doing that first year. I mean, he didn't know as a parent what he was doing, and I didn't know as an addict alcoholic what I was doing. But, you know, it's interesting in looking back that we kind of learned some of that stuff together, you know. And, I mean, my dad has said to me many times, he's like, if you had gone back to school right away and stayed in, he goes, I think you would have gone back out using. He's like, I think you needed that time. I was going to so many meetings. All I did was recovery. That's all I did. I just completely immersed myself into it. But anyway, so I did my third step, and then I had to do a third step prayer, which is where you get down on your knees and you say the third step prayer, which is basically about surrender. And if you've never heard the story about my mom and her last night, when they took her off life support, my friend Liz I said to her, will you read the serenity, or will you say the serenity prayer out loud? Because we were like all holding hands in the room and standing there. And I said, will you say the serenity prayer? And she said, and holding her hand, and she said, yeah. And then I said, actually, will you say the third step prayer? And the third step prayer is about surrender, and it's about removing us from the bondage of self, so that we can be of God's will, whatever God wants from us. And it's turning over your will and your life to God is what it is, or your higher power, or your belief in whatever. My mom, or Liz, was holding, and my mom had we had taken her off life support, and she didn't pass away like real quick, like people think it happens. It was like, it was a while. And I didn't know I was at the end of the video. But, you know, they were in the room, and they were like, you can say goodbye. You can tell your mom it's okay to go. You can tell your mom it's okay to go. And I was like, I've told her, you know, like, it was so weird. But anyway, so I said, you know, say the serenity prayer. And then I said, oh, will you say the third step prayer? And Liz said, yeah. So, and weirdly enough, like, Liz and my mom look a lot alike. In fact, at my mom's funeral, Liz stood next to me the whole time, and they thought that she was like a niece of my mom's, because she looked so much like my mom when she was younger. So anyway, she and my mom adored Liz, and so she held my mom's hand, And she started reciting the third step prayer, and Liz's tear like fell and hit my mom's hand, and at like the moment that it did, like my mom flatlined. Okay, so what's weird about this is later that night I wasn't living at the condo at that point. I went to my mom's house, and underneath her bed, like right where she slept, was her Bible and her basic text from Alcoholics Anonymous. And the only part that was highlighted in the entire, I mean, like, this is still like, the only part that was highlighted in the entire basic text, okay, was the third step prayer. And my mother had underlined and written and all kinds of stuff in that. I mean, she is one of the most used AA books I have ever seen in my entire life. But that was the only part that was highlighted, actually. I still think about that, you know? It's like, so anyway, I get sober, and I, you know, do the third step prayer, but like on my knees and, you know, at my home group and all this kind of stuff. But then I don't really work on it. He's like, you can come back to this later. You know, you can find out who your God is later. You don't need to figure it out right now. So at 2 years, that was my first sponsor. So at 2 years, I now have a different sponsor who I've told a story about him before, but he died of a heroin overdose. So I have another sponsor, and he's hardcore, and I loved him. I loved him so much. He was changed my life. And he's like, we were having a conversation. I said, I think that I need to figure out who my God is, or something like that. I can't remember how it came up, but so he was like, okay. He was like, what are you afraid of? Something like that. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, what's your biggest fear in life? And I said, my biggest fear? And he was like, yeah. And I said, my biggest fear is death. My biggest fear is dying. And which weirdly enough kind of went away. Like, I'm not ready to go, and I'm still afraid to die, but like my fear of death kind of went away a lot with my mom's passing, honestly. And I remember her saying that to me. Like, we would talk about my fear of death, and she would say, you know, like, when grandma died, like, I wasn't as scared as I used to be. And she's like, I think it goes away as you get older and as people around you pass. I think it's kind of true, you know. I think you kind of just realize I don't really have a lot of control over it. What's gonna happen is gonna happen. Even though that's, you know, not a really comforting thought. So anyway, so he was like, what's your biggest fear? And you guys, this kind of goes in a crazy direction for a second, so just prepare. So anyway, I was like, death, and he was like, okay. He was like, well, what's your fear of death? And I was like, well, I don't know what happens when we die. And he was like, okay, well, you need to he goes, you love to read, find a book that will kind of, you know, address that for you. And I was like, okay. And he goes, and that's where we're going to start your spiritual journey of what works for you. So true story, you guys, the first book that I read to start my spiritual journey was Sylvia Browne's The Other Side and Back, The Psychic. This is true, you guys, okay? Like, I don't know how I found that book or whatever, but it's not like I believe that she's for real and that she wasn't a fake, because I don't know, maybe I still want to hope that she wasn't, but because she said some things that really just so resonated with me, you know, at that time. Like, it's crazy to think that you read a book by some psychic, but then like it ends up having some huge impact on your life. I don't know, like it just did. And so I read The Other Side and Back, and it's basically about what life is, what the afterlife is like. She goes in there and talks about spirit guides and all this kind of stuff. And what she talks about in there is that you make a blueprint for your life before you come here with your spirit group. And in your spirit group, you have a spirit guide, right? That you work with always. And But there's these different souls, spirit guides that you work with, and you have a group, and that you kind of like, you get to decide like who you are going to be born into, what family, where, things like that, which will in turn help you learn. I know this sounds crazy, but will in turn help you learn certain lessons in your life. So, for example, me being born into the mother of an alcoholic and me being an alcoholic were things that maybe I chose before I ever came here, because they were going to teach me certain lessons in my life, right? And, there was a huge pothole that I just missed, you guys. Whew. Okay, so, and then one of the other things that talked about in there, and then it talked about like a very visual afterlife, and that we all have jobs there and things that we do. It made a lot of sense when I read it at the time. I don't know, I haven't read it ever since I don't know, 22 years now. But then it talked about like, we have 5 exit points on Earth that are like near-death experiences, so to speak, and that we can choose to go whenever we want. And that deja vu is when we're exactly where we're supposed to be on this blueprint for our life. So we might not always be on this blueprint, so to speak, or this map. We might go off of it because free will takes us off of it. But there are going to be moments like when we meet somebody, or, you know, we're at a Christmas dinner or whatever, that like, or that we've already set and we've planned that on this blueprint. And so it's reminiscent to us. And that's really what deja vu is, because we're reminded of this blueprint that we made before we ever came here, you know, which I think is interesting. And then I read that book later, you know, that I was talking about in my Peterson's video the other day, If Life is a Game, These Are the Rules, which is, and you will forget all of this when you're born, is the last rule, meaning that there are many lives, which is consistent with like Many Lives, Many Masters, the book that I read. I don't know, it just like, after a while, it all starts kind of floating together, and it just makes sense to me on some level, you know, like I don't even know that I can verbalize it, how it works for me, and it's, you know what, and it doesn't need to be understood by anybody. It's private to me, and it doesn't need to be believed by anybody, and people can think that I'm crazy, and that's okay. And one of the things that was great through all of this, my spiritual journey, because what happened then was that I started reading about a lot of other things like Native American wisdom and Kabbalism and, you know, Buddhism and Hinduism. I started like picking and taking things that, you know, like really stuck with me. And, you know, one of the very first meetings I ever went to once I got out was this Cocaine Anonymous meeting. I remember this woman came up to me, and I like left the meeting, and they were all talking about God, 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 God. And I went to the back of the meeting, I was like smoking a cigarette, and she came up to me and she was like, "Why'd you leave the meeting?" And I was like, "Because they were talking about God and I didn't want to hear it." And she was like, "Is that what you heard?" She was like, "Take what you like and leave the rest." That's kind of a slogan, a recovery slogan. But she was like, "Take what you like and leave the rest." And that like so stuck with me, you know, that like I didn't have to take all of the pieces. I could take what I wanted, what worked for me, right? I know that that probably sounds like, you know, well, that's kind of, you know, a ridiculous religious belief, but it works for me better than having none, I guess, you know? And the thing that it did, by learning about all of these different things, was that it made me really open and respectful of other people's religious beliefs. All of a sudden, I no longer had this resistance, you know? Like, when other people would tell me about their religious beliefs, I'm like, hey, if that's what works for you, I think that's great, you know? Like, mad respect for you. Like, I think that's great that you have such strong faith, you know? And I really do feel that way, you know, as long as what other people are doing is not condemning of who I am as a person, or trying to change who I am as a person, or, I mean, unless it's change for the good, you know, like learning lessons about myself in life and things like that. But, you know, as long as there's not negative connotations with it, like, I'm fine with that, you know? And most of the people that I choose to surround myself with that have strong religious beliefs, they follow religions that are healthy, I think, you know? So I don't know, it opened my mind. And that's really where a lot of like these lessons started coming, like lessons of the soul, you know? I remember I started reading, oh God, my mom loved those books back in the day, Conversations with God. I like the first one, I think I got like a fourth of the way through or something. I don't remember how much I read of it, maybe more. I'd have to I have it in the basement. I have all 3 of them in the basement because they were my mom's. I think I have 2 copies of the first one, mine and hers, but you know, it really made me start looking at the world in a different way and start realizing that, you know, my mom would always say, we're just a bag of soul. Like, she really believed that. And that our experience, and she was not somebody that had read Sylvia Browne's book. My mother was a woman of very strong faith. You know, like I said, she was raised Episcopalian, and then she converted to being a Lutheran when she married my dad, and she stayed in a Lutheran church until she passed away. She was involved in 2 different Lutheran churches, of which she was very involved in. But then towards the end of her life, I would say like the last 10 years, my mother, she read a lot about Buddhism. And in fact, she loved this book called Living Buddha, Living Christ, which was basically talking about Buddha and Christ as being these figureheads for love and compassion and kindness, you know, and that their missions were very similar. And there was a lot to her, and I'm not educated on Buddhism the way that she was, so I don't really have any business talking about it. I don't really know anything much about it, but I know simple things, you know. And I read books like The Tao of Pooh, and there was a Wizard of Oz one that was really great that I read. And I've read some Buddhist monks' work like Thich Nhat Hanh, and he actually just read an article about him the other day. Like he just wrote his like last thing or something about death and dying. I don't know, something they were saying about him that was interesting. But my mom really did understand it. And, you know, I love the idea of this coexist. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Where all the world religions can kind of, to some degree, they could coexist together. I like the idea of that. I'm not sure that all of the world religions want to have that be the case, but I don't know. You know, I had, like, years ago I wrote this blog. So I used to write, I had several different blogs, and I used to write on them consistently, and I said on a blog, and it's basically a recovery motto, that there's a God and I'm not it. And I said that in there, and it got, I think it was one of the pieces that got published on the Huffington Post, and all these people were like, how do you know there's a God? How do you know there's a God? You know? Well, faith is believing in something when it's not there, you know, that, I mean, I think that the idea of faith in anything is, this road, you guys, I'm really sorry, I would not have come this way if I had known that they had just done miles of patchwork on it, but it's like every pothole is patched up. You know, the idea of faith is like, it's a cornerstone of any kind of spiritual belief, right? Because what's interesting is, if you think about faith, really, like blind faith, that if we could see, like, let's just say whatever God you believe in, let's just call it God, for example, right? If you could see God, then you wouldn't have to have faith to be tested, right? If you could see God's actions, if you could see the things that happen, you could see miracles occur, you know? Because I do like to believe in the idea of a miracle. I really do. And if you could see these things, like really visually see it, like we would turn on the news and like they'd say, and in today's news, you know, God cured 400 people of blah, 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 and they showed God sitting in a hospital or something. Like, we wouldn't have to do the work to have blind faith, you know? I think that blind faith, or faith, is believing in something that you're not sure of. But the thing is that the real work for me, you know, like, I'm not somebody that just went to church, and I think it's great if this is what works for somebody, you know, have at it. But like, I wasn't the person that just like went to church, was told to believe in this stuff, and then just believed in it because I didn't think for myself. Like, I did we're talking about extensive spiritual work that I like went on a spiritual journey, you know? And one of the huge things I had to realize by all of that is I was reading about, you know, all of this stuff, you know, especially Native American wisdom, like really woke me up to just kind of the world, you know, that there was so much that because I think it was so contradictory from what everything else that I had read, and so it kind of really made me think in a different kind of way. And you know what I really realized was I'm human, and I'm gonna screw up, and I'm gonna make mistakes, and I'm gonna be afraid, and I'm gonna be unsure, and there are going to be times that I'm going to lack compassion and love and understanding and forgiveness. And that really, what spirituality is for, is to remind me that I'm human, to realize that I can learn from my mistakes, to guide me in the direction of being compassionate, loving, kind, and caring, and forgiving, and tolerant, and understanding. But I'm not God. And there is a God, I do believe that, and I'm not it. I'm a human being simply trying to do the best job that I can do, you know? I don't claim perfection on any level. And when I got that, you know, it made things a little easier for me. It made me realize not to use it as an excuse to screw up, but as an excuse to step up when I do screw up. That it's an opportunity for growth. And that's how I choose to use it today, you know? I can't tell you how many times, you know, in my prayers I've said, God, I screwed up. Help me to see what I need to do next, or, you know, things like that. And recently I was talking in my Peterisms about, like, you guys are probably so bored tonight hearing about this. By the way, if you've made it this far, will you do me a favor? I meant to say this at the beginning of my video, but I guess I'm going to have to start saying it in every video. Could you guys like this video, please? I would really, really appreciate it. Give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or if you like my vlogs in general. It would mean a lot to me. Thank you. I appreciate it. But, you know, like, I had to get to a point where I could be still first and learn to be still. What time am I at? Learn to be still first and, you know, not always busy in my head. Remove anger. Peace of mind and serenity today are not luxuries for me. They are things I have to have in my life. I have to have them there is the weirdest smell outside. It's like there's always kind of this like gassy smell right here because I like drive by this like gas distillery or whatever you would call it. But it's really like sulfurish smelling tonight. It's really strange. But, you know, peace of mind and serenity are no longer luxuries for me. Like, I have to have them in my life. I just do, you know? Going to anger and rage they're not healthy places for me. I don't want to live there. I know so many people that are so angry all the time, and I'm just like, God, like, I understand that you feel powerful in that moment of feeling rage and anger, but like the emotional roller coaster afterwards of just to be right. Like, I lived so much of my life like that, of just needing to be right? You know, and that's why I've had so many sponsors that have said to me over and over and over again, would you rather be happy or would you rather be right? Well, I'd rather be happy. I mean, let's just be for real. I know whenever I say that, there's always like one person that doesn't understand. They're like, well, I'd rather be right, and there are times that it's really important to be right. I'm not talking about things like getting written up at work and you know that you didn't do anything wrong. I'm not talking about that kind of stuff, okay? I'm talking about the fact that many of the decisions that I've made you know, I would say in the last year of my life, I've made because I would rather be happy than right. They just were fights I just did not want to fight anymore. You know, they were just were like, I'd rather be happy. I'd rather be happy and have peace of mind and serenity in my life. I don't want to entertain anger and hostility and rage. And I've worked so hard to get away from that, and it's just been so nice. You know, I mean, it really, really has. My life has really slowed down a lot. I've really noticed a lot more about the world. I've really been, I mean, I like to think of myself as an observant person anyway, but I've been even more observant, I would say, you know, in the last 6 months to a year. I've really slowed down a lot and taken a look at what's important to me. And, you know, like, it was interesting because I was talking about this yesterday, how much I was watching a lot of BookTube videos. Like, sometimes I forget how much I really love reading, you know? And how much I just like to binge watch a show, like when Orange is the New Black comes out, or, which I know this is the last season, but, you know, or just like a really good dinner out with friends. I get excited about it. Or like this birthday party tonight was so fun. We just sat there at the kitchen table. The kids were running around, you know, and Alex and Sarah and our friend and her sister-in-law, we all just sat there and talked, and it was, and our friend's husband, and she was feeding her baby at the table. It was fun, you know, it just was loud, and it just was nice. And, you know, getting consumed with anger and bitterness and all that stuff, it just is not worth it. It just really isn't, you know. It's just, it isn't. It just isn't worth it at all. It's like, I'd rather spend my time doing things that make me really happy. And as a result of that, like, my life has really slowed down, like, to a point where I can really enjoy my life. Where I feel like there were periods in my life where I was very like very busy, you know, and angry and just I don't want to be like that. Like, you know, that doesn't, there's nothing about that sounds delightful or entertaining to me whatsoever. And I also think, like, being angry and rageful all the time and bitter and just nasty is, like, really a way to like, focus off of the things on yourself that you really need to work on. You know, like, when I've been in that, it's like been a really good excuse for me not to have to take a look at myself by looking at the rest of the world. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like way past that gas place and I can still smell it. That's weird. But you can always smell it right when you come up on it. I'm already hungry for brunch. I didn't really eat yesterday. Like, I ate some like cheese and hummus and stuff at her house, but the camera stopped. But other than that, I didn't. Little cake. I had like 2 little cakes, I think. They were really good. I'm starting to, can you guys hear my voice? It's starting to get kind of crackly, like I'm losing my voice. I feel very at peace talking about that tonight. I don't know why. I think, like, when I realized that there's a lot of crap in my life and I could look at that, you know, I've lost my mom 11 years ago, lost my aunt and uncle in the last year, you know, things like that. There's a lot of things that I could focus on that are negative in my life, or I could choose to, and I think acknowledging those things is important, you know, not just being like, oh, it doesn't matter, you know, like acknowledging them at the time that I'm sad that they're gone, and, you know, allowing myself to grieve when I think about them and stuff. Alex and I were just talking about, you know, my aunt tonight and how much we both miss her. But I also think it's about focusing on the things that fill our lives up and make us happy as well, you know? Like my little dogs. They're so cute. Little doggies. Don't pets and animals just make our lives so happy? I was just thinking about how weird it is, like, so I came a completely different direction tonight, and I was like, I'm not anywhere near that train. Well, I'm not. Like, for me to get to where that train is right now would probably be, like, literally a half an hour drive. Is that not so funny? That I'm, like, the other direction away from that. I do think I want to go to the bookstore tomorrow, though. I've been wanting to go to the bookstore for a while now, and I haven't gone. Maybe we'll do that after brunch tomorrow. All right, you guys, listen, I'm going to get off here. I have no idea how long I've vlogged for now. I don't think an hour. I don't know what time I started. But anyway, I'm going to get off here, and I am going to... Look at how full my hair is tonight. Look at all that. I need my hair cut. I think my appointment's... I don't know if my appointment's this week or the next week. But anyway, but I'm going to have her cut it shorter next time. I'm going to get off here now and head on home and go to sleep. I hope you guys are having a really amazing day, unless you have other plans. Do you guys know what that means? Okay, so for those of you that are like, I don't understand what that means, you're like, yes, Peter, we understand what it means. It means, like, it's up to you if you have an amazing day. You know, like, you can start your day over whenever you want. If you're having a crap day, just go sit down for 5 minutes and go, okay, I need to readjust things. I want to have a good day, you know? So anyway, have an amazing day unless you have other plans. And I love you, if nobody else has told you that today. And go pass it on and tell it to somebody else. So I love you guys, and I hope you're having a wonderful Sunday, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.